Chapter 12. Kochu Tomban. The sound of the chinda mushroomed over the temple, accentuating the silence of the encompassing night. The lonely, wet road. The watching trees. Rahel, breathless, holding a coconut, stepped into the temple compound through the wooden doorway in the high white boundary wall. Inside, everything was white-walled, moss-tiled and moonlit. Everything smelled of recent rain. The thin priest was asleep on a mat on the raised stone veranda. A brass platter of coins lay near his pillow like a comic strip illustration of his dreams. The compound was littered with moons, one in each mud puddle. Kochu Tomban had finished his ceremonial rounds, and lay tethered to a wooden stake next to a steaming mound of his own dung. He was asleep, his duty done, his bowels empty, one tusk resting on the earth, the other pointed to the stars. Rahel approached quietly. She saw that his skin was looser than she remembered. He wasn't Kochu Tomban anymore. His tusks had grown. He was Velya Tomban now. The big tusker. She put the coconut on the ground next to him. A leathery wrinkle parted to reveal a liquid glint of elephant eye. Then it closed and long, sweeping lashes resummoned sleep. A tusk towards the stars. June is low season for Kathakali. But there are some temples that a troupe will not pass by without performing in. The Imenam temple wasn't one of them, but these days, thanks to its geography, things had changed. In Imenam they danced to jettison their humiliation in the heart of darkness. Their truncated swimming pool performances. They're turning to tourism to stave off starvation. On their way back from the heart of darkness, they stopped at the temple to ask pardon of their gods. To apologize for corrupting their stories. For encashing their identities. Misappropriating their lives. On these occasions, a human audience was welcome, but entirely incidental. In the broad, covered corridor, the colonnaded cathambulum abutting the heart of the temple where the blue god lived with his flute, the drummers drummed and the dancers danced, their colors turning slowly in the night. Rahel sat down cross-legged, resting her back against the roundness of a white pillar. A tall canister of coconut oil gleamed in the flickering light of the brass lamp. The oil replenished the light. The light lit the tin. It didn't matter that the story had begun, because Kathakali discovered long ago that the secret of the great stories is that they have no secrets. The great stories are the ones you have heard and want to hear again. The ones you can enter anywhere and inhabit comfortably. They don't deceive you with thrills and trick endings. They don't surprise you with the unforeseen. They are as familiar as the house you live in. Or the smell of your lover's skin. You know how they end, yet you listen as though you don't. In the way that although you know that one day you will die, you live as though you won't. In the great stories you know who lives, who dies, who finds love, who doesn't. And yet you want to know again. That is their mystery and their magic. To the Kathakali man these stories are his children and his childhood. He has grown up within them. They are the house he was raised in, the meadows he played in. They are his windows and his way of seeing. So when he tells a story, he handles it as he would a child of his own. He teases it, he punishes it. He sends it up, like a bubble. He wrestles it to the ground and lets it go again. He laughs at it because he loves it. He can fly you across whole worlds in minutes, he can stop for hours to examine a wilting leaf. Or play with a sleeping monkey's tail. He can turn effortlessly from the carnage of war. The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy 110. Into the felicity of a woman washing her hair in a mountain stream. From the crafty ebullience of a Rakshasa, with a new idea into a gossipy Malayali, with a scandal to spread. From the sensuousness of a woman with a baby at her breast into the seductive mischief of Krishna's smile. He can reveal the nugget of sorrow that happiness contains. The hidden fish of shame in a sea of glory. He tells stories of the gods, but his yarn is spun from the ungodly, human heart. The Kathakali man is the most beautiful of men. Because his body is his soul. His only instrument. From the age of 3 it has been planed and polished, pared down, harnessed wholly to the task of storytelling. He has magic in him, this man within the painted mask and swirling skins. But these days he has become unviable. Unfeasible. Condemned goods. His children deride him. They long to be everything that he is not. He has watched them grow up to become clerks and bus conductors. Class 4 non-gazetted officers. With unions of their own. But he himself, left dangling somewhere between heaven and earth, cannot do what they do. He cannot slide down the aisles of buses, counting change and selling tickets. He cannot answer bells that summon him. He cannot stoop behind trays of tea and Marie biscuits. In despair, he turns to tourism. He enters the market. He hawks the only thing he owns. The stories that his body can tell. He becomes a regional flavor. In the heart of darkness they mock him with their lolling nakedness, and their imported attention spans. He checks his rage and dances for them. He collects his fee. He gets drunk. Or smokes a joint. Good Kerala grass. It makes him laugh. Then he stops by the Imenam temple, he and the others with him, and they dance to ask pardon of the gods. Rahel, no plans, no locust stand-I, her back against a pillar, watched Karna praying on the banks of the Ganga. Karna, sheathed in his armor of light. Karna, melancholy son of Surya, god of day. Karna the generous. Karna the abandoned child. Karna the most revered warrior of them all. That night Karna was stoned. His tattered skirt was darned, there were hollows in his crown where jewels used to be. His velvet blouse had grown bald with use. His heels were cracked. Tough. He stubbed his joints out on them. But if he had had a fleet of makeup men waiting in the wings, an agent, a contract, a percentage of the profits, what then would he be? An imposter. A rich pretender. An actor playing a part. Could he be Karna? Or would he be too safe inside his pot of wealth? Would his money grow like a rind between himself and his story? Would he be able to touch its heart, its hidden secrets, in the way that he can now? Perhaps not. This man tonight is dangerous. His despair complete. This story is the safety net above which he swoops and dives like a brilliant clown in a bankrupt circus. It's all he has to keep him from crashing through the world like a falling stone. It is his color and his light. It is the vessel into which he pours himself. It gives him shape. Structure. It harnesses him. It contains him. His love. His madness. His hope. His infinite joy. Ironically, his struggle is the reverse of an actor's struggle. He strives not to enter a part, but to escape it. But this is what he cannot do. In his abject defeat lies his supreme triumph. He is Karna, whom the world has abandoned. Karna alone. Condemned. Goods. A prince raised in poverty. Born to die unfairly, unarmed and alone at the hands of his brother. Majestic in his complete despair. Praying on the banks of the Ganga. Stoned out of his skull. Then Kunti appeared. She too was a man, but a man grown soft and womanly, a man with breasts, from doing female parts for years. Her movements were fluid. Full of woman. Kunti too was stoned. High on the same shared joints. She had come to tell Karna a story. The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy 111. Karna inclined his beautiful head and listened. Red-eyed, Kunti danced for him. She told him of a young woman who had been granted a boon. A secret mantra that she could use to choose a lover from among the gods. Of how, with the imprudence of youth, the woman decided to test it to see if it really worked. How she stood alone in an empty field, turned her face to the heavens, and recited the mantra. The words had scarcely left her foolish lips, Kunti said, when Surya, the god of day, appeared before her. The young woman, bewitched by the beauty of the shimmering young god, gave herself to him. 9 months later she bore him a son. The baby was born sheathed in light, with gold earrings in his ears and a gold breastplate on his chest, engraved with the emblem of the sun. The young mother loved her firstborn son deeply, Kunti said, but she was unmarried and couldn't keep him. She put him in a reed basket and cast him away in a river. The child was found downriver by Adhirata, a charioteer, and named Karna. Karna looked up at Kunti. Who was she? Who was my mother? Tell me where she is. Take me to her. Kunti bowed her head. She's here, she said. Standing before you. Karna's elation and anger at the revelation. His dance of confusion and despair. Where were you, he asked her, when I needed you most? Did you ever hold me in your arms? Did you feed me? Did you ever look for me? Did you wonder where I might be? In reply Kunti took the regal face in her hands, green the face, red the eyes, and kissed him on his brow. Karna shuddered in delight. A warrior reduced to infancy. The ecstasy of that kiss. He dispatched it to the ends of his body. To his toes. His fingertips. His lovely mother's kiss. Did you know how much I missed you? Rahel could see it coursing through his veins, as clearly as an egg traveling down an ostrich's neck. A traveling kiss whose journey was cut short by dismay when Karna realized that his mother had revealed herself to him only to secure the safety of her 5 other, more beloved sons, the Pandavas, poised on the brink of their epic battle with their 100 cousins. It is them that Kunti sought to protect by announcing to Karna that she was his mother. She had a promise to extract. She invoked the love laws. They are your brothers. Your own flesh and blood. Promise me that you will not go to war against them. Promise me that. Karna the warrior could not make that promise, for if he did, he would have to revoke another one. Tomorrow he would go to war, and his enemies would be the Pandavas. They were the ones, Arjuna in particular, who had publicly reviled him for being a lowly charioteer's son. And it was Duryodhana, the eldest of the 100 Kaurava brothers, that came to his rescue by gifting him a kingdom of his own. Karna, in return, had pledged Duryodhana eternal fealty. But Karna the generous could not refuse his mother what she asked of him. So he modified the promise. Equivocated. Made a small adjustment, took a somewhat altered oath. I promise you this, Karna said to Kunti. You will always have 5 sons. Yudhishthira I will not harm. Bhima will not die by my band. The twins, Nakula and Sahadeva, will go untouched by me. But Arjuna, him I will make no promises about. I will kill him, or he will kill me. One of us will die. Something altered in the air. And Rahel knew that Estha had come. She didn't turn her head, but a glow spread inside her. He's come, she thought. He's here. With me. Estha settled against a distant pillar, and they sat through the performance like this, separated by the breadth of the Kathambalam, but joined by a story. And the memory of another mother. The air grew warmer. Less damp. Perhaps that evening had been a particularly bad one in the heart of darkness. In The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy 112. I Menem the men danced as though they couldn't stop. Like children in a warm house sheltering from a storm. Refusing to emerge and acknowledge the weather. The wind and thunder. The rats racing across the ruined landscape with dollar signs in their eyes. The world crashing around them. They emerged from one story only to delve deep into another. From Karna Shabadam, Karna's oath, to Duryodhana Vadbam, the death of Duryodhana, and his brother Dushasana. It was almost 4 in the morning when Bhima hunted down vile Dushasana. The man who had tried to publicly undress the Pandava's wife, Draupadi, after the Kauravas had won her in a game of dice. Draupadi, strangely angry only with the men that won her, not the ones that staked her, has sworn that she will never tie up her hair until it is washed in Dushasana's blood. Bhima has vowed to avenge her honor. Bhima cornered Dushasana in a battlefield already strewn with corpses. For an hour. They fenced with each other. Traded insults. Listed all the wrongs that each had done. The other. When the light from the brass lamp began to flicker and die, they called a truce. Bhima poured the oil, Dushasana cleaned the charred wick. Then they went back to war. Their breathless battle spilled out of the Kathambalam and spun around the temple. They chased each other across the compound, twirling their papier-mâché maces. 2 men in ballooning skirts and balding velvet blouses, vaulting over littered moons and mounds of dung, circling around the hulk of a sleeping elephant. Dushasana full of bravado 1 minute. Cringing the next. Bhima toying with him. Both stoned. The sky was a rose bowl. The grey, elephant-shaped hole in the universe agitated in his sleep, then slept again. Dawn was just breaking when the brute in Bhima stirred. The drums beat louder, but the air grew quiet and full of menace. In the early morning light, Esthapan and Rahel watched Bhima fulfill his vow to Draupadi. He clubbed Dushasana to the floor. He pursued every feeble tremor in the dying body with his mace, hammering at it until it was stilled. An ironsmith flattening a sheet of recalcitrant metal. Systematically smoothing every pit and bulge. He continued to kill him long after he was dead. Then, with his bare hands, he tore the body open. He ripped its innards out and stooped to lap blood straight from the bowl of the torn carcass, his crazed eyes peeping over the rim, glittering with rage and hate and mad fulfillment. Gurgling blood bubbles pale pink between his teeth. Dribbling down his painted face, his neck and chin. When he had drunk enough, he stood up, bloody intestines draped around his neck like a scarf, and went to find Draupadi and bathe her hair in fresh blood. He still had about him the aura of rage that even murder cannot quell. There was madness there that morning. Under the rose bowl. It was no performance. Esthapan and Rahel recognized it. They had seen its work before. Another morning. Another stage. Another kind of frenzy, with millipedes on the soles of its shoes. The brutal extravagance of this matched by the savage economy of that. They sat there, quietness and emptiness, frozen 2 egg fossils, with horn bumps that hadn't grown into horns. Separated by the breadth of a Kathambalam. Trapped in the bog of a story that was and wasn't theirs. That had set out with the semblance of structure and order, then bolted like a frightened horse into anarchy. Kochu Tomban woke and delicately cracked open his morning coconut. The Kathakali men took off their makeup and went home to beat their wives. Even Kunti, the soft one with breasts. Outside and around, the little town masquerading as a village stirred and came to life. An old man woke and staggered to the stove to warm his peppered coconut oil. Comrade Pillai. Eminem's egg breaker and professional omeletter. Oddly enough, it was he who had introduced the twins to Kathakali. Against baby Kochama's better judgment, it was he who took them, along with Lenin, for all-night performances at the temple, and sat up with them till dawn, explaining the language and gesture of Kathakali. Aged 6, they had sat with him through this very story. It was he. The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy 113. Who had introduced them to Raudra Bhima, crazed, bloodthirsty Bhima in search of death and vengeance. He is searching for the beast that lives in him, Comrade Pillai had told them, frightened, wide-eyed children, when the ordinarily good-natured Bhima began to bay and snarl. Which beast in particular Comrade Pillai didn't say. Searching for the man who lives in him was perhaps what he really meant, because certainly no beast has essayed the boundless, infinitely inventive art of human hatred. No beast can match its range and power. The rose bowl dulled and sent down a warm grey drizzle. As Estha and Rahel stepped through the temple gateway, Comrade K.N.M. Pillai stepped in, slick from his oil bath. He had sandalwood paste on his forehead. Raindrops stood out on his oiled skin like studs. In his cupped palms he carried a small heap of fresh jasmine. "Oh ho," he said in his piping voice. "You are here. So still you are interested in your Indian culture? Good, good. Very good." The twins, not rude, not polite, said nothing. They walked home together. He and she. We and us. Chapter 13.